Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 8 of the Podunk Polymath. Thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. This week on the pre-ramble, I have a couple things to talk about. First of all, I want to acknowledge a new review. I don't know if she wants me to use her name or not, but she was a guest on the show, so that maybe it's a little biased, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and read it. And she goes by The Ant, A-U-N-T, not A-N-T, and it says, "Listen up, this is important. 7 episodes in and he's having conversations with people we need to be listening to. Getting smart atheists to talk about the stuff we don't talk about or in a way that we don't normally talk about the topics. There's echo chamber fatigue and we can't all care about everything. We each have to care about our corner, but not require others to care about it as much as we do. Educate, but trust that others are as passionate about their own corners. Help each other however we can. That's what the Podunk Polymath has been bringing to the table." Actually, a very good review, and I deeply appreciate the deep insights there. I can only aspire to such things. Hopefully, some people listen and get something out of it. That's all I can ever ask for. Obviously, I'm not doing it for the money. So, I don't really have much to say on the pre-ramble. I would like to mention that Luke Cage just came out as a series on Netflix. And you might say, well, Luke Cage, who gives a shit? It's just some Netflix series, right? Well, actually, it's a very good Netflix series. And there was an article on The Root about it. And I posted it to the Podunk Polymath page, and it's basically talking about this is the hero we need in a hoodie, and he's impenetrable, which, I mean, basically, bullets don't penetrate, he can't get shot, he's a superhero or whatever. So, it's a good metaphor for the community, and I've watched a couple episodes, I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but I will say that the feel is right. It's supposed to be in Harlem, and I'm not going to sit here and say I've ever been to Harlem, but from what I've read and from some of my friends on Facebook who know all about it, they say it's very true to form, very authentic, the music is right, the feel is right. There is like hardly any white people in this show, which is just unheard of, really, if you think about it. When's the last time you heard about a show that has a majority black, non-white cast, mostly black? I think it's quite refreshing, and I encourage anybody who's interested in good, not just, anything about because it's, black or whatever, black people are in it, but because it's a good series, and it's a superhero series too, so it's good in that aspect as well. It's not just a superhero series, it's also a black series, it's a black culture, I guess, series, so I encourage anybody to go check it out. Because it's a good show in general. It's a good superhero show, but it's also a very diverse show. So I tell you, go watch it, basically. If you don't have Netflix, you can get it for a month for free. So maybe you can binge watch it. A lot of people like to do that, binge watch shows and see what's up. I encourage you to do that. On the interview this week, I have a YouTube superstar. Well, he probably wouldn't say that. But to me, I was surprised to get him, and I'm very happy that he came on, actually, and maybe a little controversy might come with this one. So, stick around and see what I'm talking about, and see if you enjoy it.
Hey everybody, this is Andrew Garber from the Atheist Roundtable Podcast. Find the Atheist Roundtable on Blog Talk Radio, or you can find the fan page for the Atheist Roundtable on Facebook. I'm here to tell you about the most amazing event coming to us in 2017. It's going to happen on April 21st and 22nd. It's going to happen at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Hickory, North Carolina, and it is ReasonCon 3. ReasonCon is the most amazing event that you will ever see. It is so freaking awesome. Already, we have amazing speakers lined up for ReasonCon 3, like Lawrence Krauss, Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Raw, and Callie Wright will all be at ReasonCon 3. So many more people will be there. Just go to reasonnc.com so that you can be the first to know when people are added to that roster. Every year, ReasonCon is the time when you can meet some of your favorite podcasters, and I can guarantee you that ReasonCon 3 will be no exception to that. I can almost guarantee that people like the Atheist Avengers will be there, that Promoting Secular Feminism will be there, that that No Religion Required will be there, that the Barroom Atheist will be there, the Atheist Roundtable, that's me, I'll definitely be there, and I know that so many more podcasters that you know and love are going to come back to ReasonCon 3. In the past, we've had amazing podcasters that I'm sure are all going to come back and be part of this amazing event. Go to reasonnc.com to make sure that you can find out when your favorite podcaster gets on that roster. Again, ReasonCon 3, April 21st and 22nd of 2017 at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Hickory, North Carolina. You are going to love it. So get your information, because you can't get tickets yet. Get it. Go to reasonnc.com. Make sure you sign up for all the information as it comes your way. I'll see you there.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I interview bloggers, podcasters, writers, and activists about the intersections of atheism, humanism, racial justice, feminism, LGBTQ rights, and other social issues. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher, and you can read my blog at freethoughtblogs.com/byanymeans. And remember, that's bi spelled B-I. Come take a listen to the musings of a queer humanist because, hey, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
Welcome to another edition of the Palaver here on the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week I have a bona fide YouTube celebrity with me. He has done such series as An Atheist Reads, 5 Things, The Facepalm 5, and now The Good News. And of course, Stephen Stuffy is my personal favorite. I present to you the smart, gifted, and wonderful Steve Shives. How's it going, man?
Wow, it's going pretty good after that intro. You know, we're going to be friends right away because you said Stephen Stuffy was one of your favorites. So
yeah, I do quite enjoy that.
That's good. I'm glad.
Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I wanted to first of all, why don't you just, because I don't know if everybody, I'm sure most of my SJW type friends know who you are, but for those listeners who, and I use that, I'd use that term as a, not as a pejorative, just
yeah, sure.
Give a little brief synopsis of who you are and what you do.
Well, I've had a YouTube channel for, about 6 years now. And I make YouTube videos every day, Monday through Friday, and I talk about a whole plethora of topics in a couple of different formats. I do commentary on the news. I do commentary on politics. I make videos about particular subjects. Those are the 5 things videos you mentioned. I do a series usually for about the first half or the first 2/3 of every year called An Atheist Reads, where I respond to Christian apologetics books. And I do a series called Steve and Stuffy, which is me goofing off and trying to be funny with a cast of stuffed animals. And it's just sort of whatever comes into my brain, whatever I think is funny, whatever I think is important to talk about. And yeah, I am, or at least I try very hard to be an ally to feminism, an ally to various social justice movements. I think that's really important to me, and that has endeared me to some, and it has really, really pissed some other people off.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just kind of delve right into that, because that's going to be the main focus of this interview. I heard about you, of course, a couple years ago. A friend of mine brought you to my attention. I was like, hey, Steve Shives, he's a pretty cool guy. He talks about cool stuff or whatever. And I was a bad person because I don't watch YouTube that much, I guess. And And I got all obsessed with atheist podcasts at the time, and I was doing one myself. But then recently, you've kind of reemerged into into a lot of people's consciousness, I guess, in regards to sort of, I guess, your not so great reputation among certain YouTube atheists. And I guess it's because, well, I've heard you referred to as a cuck before, which is an interesting term, I think.
Yeah.
I guess I want to ask you, what the hell happened? Why or was this all of a sudden thing, or was it just,
I have a bad reputation among people with whom I would not want to have a good reputation. I guess it happened. It started to happen a couple years ago when I became a little bit more outspoken in my support of feminism and my support of other progressive social causes. My own particular views on those issues have not changed a great deal, since I've had a YouTube channel. I think I definitely have changed and made progress and hopefully become more aware of things and more conscious of things. But I've been a supporter of feminism, for instance, for my entire adult life. Like that's nothing that just sort of cropped up a few years ago. That's always essentially been a part of me. And the same thing with support for racial justice and all the other sort of what people try to deride as the SJW stuff. That's always been stuff that's been important to me. But the reason why I think I've attracted attention from some of the less savory members of the atheist community is because I started speaking out to criticize other atheists, and not even other atheists in particular, but just talking about the existence of problematic atheists, people, especially on YouTube, people who had YouTube audiences in the hundreds of thousands and were routinely getting, relative to the atheist circles of YouTube, very large amounts of views. And they were pushing these really derogatory, often bigoted viewpoints about feminism, about women in general, about black folks or people of color in general. And they were racking up a great deal of subscribers and popularity and views by basically appealing to the paranoia and the prejudices and the bigotries of people watching their videos. And I just sort of started to say, hey, this should not be what people see when they look for atheist stuff, on YouTube. When someone, decides, hey, you know what, I was raised in a religious home, but I don't believe in God anymore, and I want to reach out and find other atheists who, can maybe give me some guidance. I don't want the first video they see to be some jerk talking about how feminism is cancer or how black people should stop complaining about racism. I think that's awful. I think that's embarrassing. And so I started to sort of speak out that this is a problem and we should be doing something about this. Those of us who are more socially conscious or more progressive or more have more of a mindset oriented toward social justice issues and human rights, we should be speaking out about this. We should be making our voices heard instead of letting these jerks be the ones who are speaking for atheists. And that did not endear me to certain folks.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I try to just put it mildly. I did it, of course. If anybody will do a search for Steve Shives, you might not come up with the greatest results necessarily. You might come across certain videos from The Amazing Atheist or Sargon of Akkad or whatever the other Thunder Dick. I don't remember
Thunder Dick. Yeah,
whatever the fuck his name is. Anyway, oh yeah, this is a cursing show. I didn't tell you that. But anyway, I didn't, like I said, I didn't really start noticing this. I don't know if Reason Rally was held. And the thing that started me kind of paying more attention, because I'd always heard about the so-called YouTube atheists and their kind of, just dickhead. I mean, I knew they were outspoken. I knew they were loud and brash and they were trying to, I suppose it was because the medium itself being YouTube, and that kind of caters more to sort of an outrageous visual style and oratorical style or something like that. So I understood that to an extent, but when I heard some of the shit they were saying, I was like, wow, they are saying some pretty bizarre, because social justice for me has always been sort of in the back of my mind anyway. But I went through the angry atheist phase for the first year or so or whatever, like a lot of people do. And then, I was like, oh, atheist all the time. Now, I wasn't as bad as they were. I never was. I may have said a couple of things that were maybe off color, but I always had a social justice bent anyway. But when I started this podcast, and I wanted this particularly to be more of a social justice oriented podcast, and when I started paying more attention, I noticed that they were just being really just racist, misogynistic, just all the bad things, basically.
Yeah.
And so, the first thing that I think really brought to me was when Reason Rally happened. And I remember there was a code of conduct, I believe it was. I don't know if you remember this or not, but it basically said something of the thing that hung them up was use people's proper pronouns, I believe. That was probably one of the many. But they got real hung up on the fact that they had to use people's proper pronouns. And of course, they've been blamed for, of course, I don't think this is necessarily true, but I think it was just a natural progression. But not as many people turning out for Reason Rally as last time was because it was becoming too social justicey, and the atheists, there's not enough atheisty stuff, I guess. I mean, I guess we're supposed to just sit there and talk about how much we hate God 24/7. I'm not exactly sure what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, that's when I heard Thunder Dick, for the first time, kind of emit his noxious fumes from his pie hole. So, yeah, this is kind of where this kind of started to me. Do you recall this incident, the Reason Rally thing?
Oh, sure. I think at first it came out. Well, Thunderfoot started whining about it a few days before the rally, if I remember correctly, or shortly before, and people started to lose their minds about the code of conduct, which was the most general, basic, just be nice to people code of conduct that you could ever, imagine. Like, it was basically just treat people with respect. Exactly. And don't bother people if they tell you they don't want to be bothered, right? And how anyone could object to that, I have no idea. Like, it just, to me, that's the signal that, okay, you know what? You're an asshole and you shouldn't be there anyway. If you read a code of conduct that says, please use people's preferred pronouns, and you go, oh, this is ridiculous, well, then you don't need to be there. I don't think anybody's going to miss you if you would throw a fit over wanting to call a trans person by their proper pronouns. Well, then goodbye, It's so, but that was a few days before that. And then the Reason Rally happened, and I was there, and I had a great time. I got to hang out with a lot of great people, both people who who knew me from the YouTube channel, and also people who were fellow YouTubers who I had known online for a while and had not had much of a chance to hang out with in person. Like, I got to hang out with Serious Mind a good deal. He's a good friend of mine. I got to hang out with Anubis2814. I got to hang out for a few minutes with Aaron Ra. He and I had met once or twice before, but he was there. And, it was just a great time. Like, it was just a really good experience. And the rally itself was nice. Most of the speakers were terrific. And overall, it was just a really nice message. And even though the crowd was smaller than the first Reason Rally, to me, it was a great indication that the atheist movement, the atheist secular whatever movement in general, is growing up and is making shifts that it has to make in order to be a politically and socially relevant movement. There was a lot of focus on political activism. There was a lot of focus on issues that should be of interest to atheists and humanists, like women's reproductive rights, which are often curtailed by people making explicitly religious arguments, like separation of church and state, and there were like workshops before the rally, to teach people how to reach out to your congressperson, how to lobby for issues that you care about to people in your government, and how to make your voice heard as an atheist or a humanist voter. And I think that was all fantastic. And that's the kind of stuff that the people complain about when they start to piss and moan about, oh, they're not talking about atheism. Like anything that is outside of this tiny little circle of, well, if you're not explicitly making an argument against religion or trying to pick a fight with a religious person, or talking about how great it is that there is no God, and how much smarter you are because you know there is no God. And those poor deluded religious people, well, they're just not as smart as we are. Anything outside of that is considered out of bounds to a lot of these people who were complaining about the Reason Rally and who complain about so-called SJWs and all that stuff. And, you know, if that's how they feel about it, then they don't need to be there. Do you really think anybody there was sad that Thunderfoot wasn't there? You really? I didn't see anybody at that rally, and there was a pretty decent turnout. There were a few thousand people there. I don't think anybody was upset that Thunderfoot wasn't there walking around. Thunderfoot wasn't supposed to be there anyway. He wasn't invited. He wasn't supposed to be a speaker. It's not like somebody was like, hey, Thunderfoot's going to be here. And then he said, no, I'm not coming. He wasn't supposed to be there anyway. If he had gone, he would have just been another face in the crowd. So who gives a shit that he didn't go?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a little ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've been on YouTube. How long have you been on YouTube?
I think about 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm assuming you've known, of course, your kind of topic is the same sort of, you're in the same sort of realm as they are, generally speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was this something have they always been this way, or is this something that just came to a head recently, or what?
It's the answer to both questions. It's sort of yes and yes. I mean, I think they have always been this way. But I think it has also come to a head just recently. I think if you look at videos, I mean, Thunderfoot has been talking shit about feminism for years. Like that's not a new thing. That goes back at least to 2012, when he started flipping out about feminism. And Thunderfoot's previous flip outs about feminism were also triggered by codes of conduct when atheist conferences and secular conferences responded to women raising concerns about sexual harassment at atheist conferences by saying, okay, we're going to have codes of conduct so that people who attend will be made aware ahead of time. Here's what we want you to not do while you're at the conference. We want you to treat people with respect. We want you to be able to recognize boundaries. We want, and this is just basic stuff that nobody in his right mind should really be complaining about. But Thunderfoot started to lose it over that. And that was 4 or 5 years ago. And that kicked off his first, big foray into anti-feminism. And the other big anti-feminist, anti-social justice YouTube atheists are pretty much the same story. The Amazing Atheist has been an asshole for pretty much the entire time anybody has known who he is. And so the Amazing Atheist has been an asshole for as long as he's been on YouTube. I mean, if you go back and look at some of his older videos, if you look at some of the stuff he has done outside of YouTube, like some of the books that he's written, there's some absolutely horrifying stuff in those things. I mean, there's a book he wrote, again, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, 2010, 2011, something like that, where there's a chapter in it about his experience signing on to a rape survivor chat room. And the whole point of it is how, rape survivors shouldn't call themselves survivors because rape isn't a lethal crime. You don't die from being raped. So why should you be called a rape survivor? What are they trying to do? Impress me by calling themselves survivors? I mean, it's just awful. It's horrifying.
What the literal fuck? What?
Yeah. It's and
I've never.
So he's always been a misogynistic piece of shit. He's always been. And so is Thunderfoot. And so have most of the big guys that are part of that group, right? But the depths of their shittiness have just been revealed further and further and further as the years have gone by. And, to the point where now there are very few people left who are followers of theirs and fans of theirs who don't know what the deal is. You know what I mean? Like most people who would subscribe to the Amazing Atheist or subscribe to Thunderfoot or people like that, they know what the deal is, and they can't say anymore. They can no longer, I like him for the atheist stuff, but I didn't know about this other bit. No, that's no longer valid, because they're just as well known for being racist, misogynistic jerks as they are for being outspoken atheists. And like I said at the beginning when we first started talking about it, I mean, it's a shame because on YouTube, they are some of the most visible, easy to find voices that are associated with atheism. And that's what you get. those are your loudest, most prominent members. These people who are rape apologists and racist and misogynist and just awful people with terrible, horrifyingly backwards views. That's sort of the place that we're at with atheism on YouTube. And it's too bad.
Too bad is putting it quite mildly.
Yes.
I would argue that it's actually destructive for the movement as a whole. I mean, if you want to call it a movement, simply because people already have atheism it's already used as a pejorative as it is. We don't need douche monkeys like this fucking making it even worse. So, that's just my opinion on it. I don't, were they all, okay, I guess, at what point because I had heard of them peripherally, I think, when I first started getting more into the whole atheist thing, secular movement or whatever. But it's only been fairly recently where I don't know if it's because, there's been a rift or a split between them and like the SJW types, or has the greater atheist movement become more socially aware in general? And the differences have become more pronounced?
Yeah, I would say in general that is true. I think, again, I think you can trace it back to around 2011, 2012, when the issue of sexual harassment at atheist conferences started to be addressed and people started to be, concerned about it. And there was sort of a fork in the road where the physical atheist movement, what you might call the real world atheist movement, the people that went to conferences, the people who engaged in activism and organizing offline, sort of went one way and said, we're going to take this seriously and we're going to treat this like a real problem. We're going to try to fix this. And we're also going to try to be more inclusive. We're going to start inviting, women to speak at conferences more often. So it won't be just men speaking. We're going to try to invite, people from different religious backgrounds. So it won't just be ex-Christians talking at the conferences, but we'll invite some ex-Muslims as well and some ex-Mormons and people from different religious backgrounds that they have come out of to become atheists. We're going to start inviting people who aren't just white people. We're going to invite black folks. We're going to invite all different categories of people of color to speak at our conferences, so that there'll be more diversity and more representation. Like that, those decisions were made, and those sort of changes were undertaken in the world of conferences and offline organizing. And it's still not perfect. There's still a long way to go, and there are still problems in the offline real world atheist movement. But in general, it's moving in the right direction, and there are a lot of really great people who are working and are trying to address those problems. Whereas on YouTube, it went, for the most part, exactly the opposite. And the most popular atheist YouTubers were the ones who said, all of that's bullshit. Sexism isn't a problem. Racism isn't a problem. All those people are just complaining about nothing. They're just being too sensitive. They just want to be special snowflakes. They're just complaining about imaginary problems. And, they're just, or they're trying to oppress us as the white men, as the cis hetero white men. They're trying to oppress us and silence us, and we need to fight back. That's the direction that the most popular atheists on YouTube went. So that was sort of the point of divergence. But I don't think that their views have ever really changed. I mean, I think that they've always felt the way that they feel when you watch their videos now. I think it's just that the non-YouTube based part of the atheist movement, which thankfully is most of it, and thankfully is the most influential part of it, decided to leave them behind and said, no. Like this isn't going to be us. We're going to move in a different direction, which is good. But unfortunately, there's still this, YouTube section of it, which could be a wonderful resource, that is just, a garbage fire.
Well, it's so distilled now to the point where it's the worst of the worst, basically, that are subscribing to those channels.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, YouTube is one of the most popular formats for viewing, listening to anything on the internet. And their visibility, like you said, it's ruining shit. It's making things worse because that's the first place people will go to find out. I remember that's where I went.
Yeah, of course.
Podcast more for me. But a lot of people, that's the first place they go, and you've said this before. And when the first thing they see is some douche nozzle like fucking, the amazing asshole or whatever, spouting out his SJW, anti-feminist, racist bullshit, it makes us look, I'll say us, but we are a movement. We want to try to act like it's not a movement or whatever. Fuck it. It's a fucking, come on, man. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily,
No. It doesn't mean you have to do anything. Right? Like that. I think that's what when people try to say it's not a movement or it's not a community, like, hey, nobody's telling you have to do anything. Okay. Just relax. You can still sit at home and not do anything to help anybody other than yourself. You can just still be as selfish as you want to be. That doesn't mean that there isn't a movement somewhere that people aren't taking part in, that people aren't trying to make things happen. That doesn't mean that there isn't a community, and it doesn't mean that you are not part of a group. If you are an atheist, you are part of a group called atheists, whether you like it or not. You have no say in the matter. It's just the way it is. I am an American. I am part of a group of people called Americans that are defined by certain parameters, whether I like it or not. It's not up to me. All of that, there is no atheist community. There is no atheist movement. It's just belly aching. It all boils down to people who are just belly aching because they feel like people are bothering them about shit that they don't care about, that they don't think is important, and they don't see why other people should think it's important either. And I think that they should follow the advice that Aaron Ra had for them when he was interviewed for the American Humanist Association a few months ago, where he said, you know what, if you don't care about this, then shut up about it. Let those of us who do care about it talk about it, and you talk about stuff that you do care about somewhere else. And we won't bother you, and you don't bother us.
And they do that anyway. It's
Exactly.
It's not like they're not going to the slime pit or someplace like that and sitting there and bitching up.
Exactly.
Or whatever form they, anybody uses. This whole free speech bullshit, completely out of context.
Yeah.
They don't even know what the word mean in context.
No, nobody's stopping them from saying anything.
No.
No.
It's not like we got fucking Goebbels fucking telling you what. I guess I shouldn't invoke Godwin's law. That was probably bad. But you don't have my point is you don't have a state authority telling you can't say something.
No, but you know what? They like to try and accuse people of doing that. Like almost any time when anyone, myself included, when you speak out about free speech issues and you speak out about, there's nothing wrong with people moderating their own platforms, and there's nothing wrong with people deciding, that, okay, a certain type of speech isn't going to be hosted in their space, or, certain ideas or certain viewpoints are going to be screened out because you consider them to be toxic or harmful or whatever. And people always say, well, who decides? As though one person has to decide, and then that will be enforced on all people everywhere, And I always say, well, on my YouTube side, I don't have the authority to decide for you. If you have a YouTube channel or a forum or a blog or whatever, you can decide what goes and what doesn't go in your space. But on my space, I decide. And so you don't need to have this question of, well, who decides what people are allowed to say and what people aren't allowed to say. Well, we all get to decide in the spaces that we control, and we all get to decide what we want to pay attention to and what we want to ignore. There's no authoritarianism going on. There's nobody trying to force other people to not listen to you. Most people who have decided they don't want to listen to people like we're talking about have decided for themselves they don't want to listen to those people because they think those people are assholes, but nobody is like silencing them.
Well, it's just so funny to me. It's just deliciously ironic how the people who are sitting there complaining about you want trigger warnings for everything, you get so offended so easily, are the very ones that are complaining when people
Yeah.
When people do, they're offended by people being not even offended most of the time. Most of the time it's just like, hey, just don't kind of be a little sensitive because somebody might have PTSD, or maybe they went through a certain, traumatic event, or maybe they don't want to be made fun of because they're overweight or gay or whatever, something like an attribute they can't control. Maybe they don't want to be fucked with like that. Maybe they don't want to be shit on, Yeah. They're the ones that are just complaining the loudest about everybody's so PC, so politically correct nowadays.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, It's because a lot of them, most of them, I think, they define freedom of speech, and they define pretty much all concepts of rights in a first-person, very, very selfish way, where the only thing they consider, or at least the thing they consider before anything else, is what about me? What is this going to do for me? You know, so if they want to say something to a particular person, like let's say they want to tweet at somebody or they want to leave a comment on somebody's YouTube video, and then they are prevented from doing that because they're blocked or their comment is removed or whatever, they consider that a violation of free speech because the only speech they care about is their speech, and they feel entitled to say what they want to say wherever they want to say it. And prevented from saying it wherever they want to say it, then they feel like that is an intolerable imposition on their freedom of speech. When, of course, that's not the way it works. You know, if I have a YouTube channel, I have freedom of speech just as much as someone else does. And if someone leaves a comment on one of my videos that I think is awful and or a waste of time or trying to start shit or whatever, and I decide to remove that comment, that is an expression of my freedom of speech because I control that platform and I get to decide what stays and what goes. I have just as much freedom to do that as anybody else does. So it's not an imposition or a loss of anybody's freedom of speech because, you know, if I left a comment on their YouTube channel that they thought was out of line and they removed it, guess what? I wouldn't say a fucking word about it. People have blocked me on Twitter. I've never said a fucking word about it. You've never seen me once tweet anything about, oh, so-and-so blocked me, because I don't give a shit. People can block me for whatever reason they want. I probably won't even notice because I don't care, you know, and if I do notice, I figure, oh, well, I must have said something that pissed them off, but I get on with my life, you know. I mean, the amount of sensitivity that they display and the amount of ass that they show in these complaints is staggering to me. Like how they can present themselves as the rational ones and the mature ones and the grown-ups and the real adults and the real men and blah, 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 when they're reduced to throwing these little tantrums and these whiny, pissy fits about somebody blocking them on Twitter or removing their comment on Facebook or YouTube. I mean, come on. Do you not realize how much ass you're showing by doing this? Do you not realize how self-defeating this whole thing is by how sensitive you are revealing yourself to be through your actions? It's staggering. And at the same time, it's kind of funny. Like that's what sort of takes the edge off of it, even though they are acting completely awfully and there's no excuse for anything they do. If you can manage to remove yourself from it a step or two and just sort of look at it with some degree of objectivity, it's really funny because they're jokes. They're jokes.
Well, I imagine after you deal with them for a while, you become sort of desensitized to an extent. I mean, especially I'm sure you have to deal with them on a fairly regular basis. So I'm sure you've kind of found a way to kind of step back, like you said, step back and just say, you know, they don't fuck.
Yeah, it becomes background noise.
I wanted to ask you specifically about Martin Hughes. Now, he had written an article on his Pathos blog, which is Barrier Breaker.
Yeah.
And this was in response to a video that Amazing Asshole did. As I recall, it has to do with gentrification, and basically he was given his brilliant take on, you know, gentrification and how, you know, you want good, you know, stores in your neighborhood. Well, you got to get rid of undesirable people, you know. It was boiled down to the worst sort of, you know, racist trash talk bullshit that I'm not even, but Martin Hughes wrote a brilliant retort to it, or rebuttal to it, and you can go read the article. I mean, anybody who's listening, go read the article or his piece or what. And then the Amazing Asshole came back and was whining about how his feelings were hurt, basically. And then he came back, and Martin wrote another article. Now, I forgot to mention that the whole genesis of this was what was the name of the video?
Well, the original video that the Amazing Atheist was responding to was called Questions for White People, I think. Questions Black people have for white people, something like that. Yeah, it
was something like that. And he was he was playing off that shit. It was like a certain number, I forgot, 25 questions white people have for something like that. And through all that, you actually interviewed Martin on one of your mini shows or whatever. Why don't you give me a kind of a brief synopsis of what y'all talked about and what you kind of gleaned the situation?
Well, we sort of discussed. I mean, we discussed specifically the things that the Amazing Atheist said, which were racist, and which Martin sort of blew the whistle on, because, and I give Martin a lot of credit for that, because a lot of us, even though we know just sort of generally speaking that the Amazing Atheist is an asshole and that Thunderfoot is an asshole, that these people are just garbage people, we know that sort of in general. But we don't pay we're not watching every video they make. You know what I mean? We're not like paying that much attention to them because we decided that they're not worth paying attention to. So Martin writes this article about the Amazing Atheist making this video, and sort of brought it to a lot of our attention because we wouldn't have probably noticed it otherwise. So he deserves a lot of credit for that because it reminded people and it woke some people up from the non-YouTube part of the community to the problem. To the fact that the YouTube portion of atheism was definitely a problem. And to point out the most subscribed to, the most watched atheist on YouTube, making multiple videos where he's just spouting blatant racism. And not only that, but getting tons of views and tons of likes for it. So he has an audience that he has attracted that doesn't think he's racist for saying things that most of us think of as just obviously, inarguably racist. That's a problem. And that was one of the major things that we talked about in the interview that I had with Martin, where it's not just that the Amazing Atheist is just this one guy saying a bunch of racist shit. It's that he has cultivated an audience around him that thinks that what he is saying is acceptable and makes sense and is rational and is logical and isn't offensive at all. And that's something that should worry us, you know. So yeah, we talked about that. We talked about, you know, Martin explained for anybody who might not have been able to figure it out for themselves why it's racist to say that gentrification that, you know, causes black people to have to leave their homes is a racial issue and is something that black folks are completely justified in complaining about, and people who care about equality and justice should be concerned about. You know, we talked about a lot of those issues, and Martin has continued to write about it, not just in reference to the Amazing Atheist, but in reference to these sorts of attitudes that are present throughout the atheist community, especially on YouTube, but here and there throughout the atheist community. And like I say, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, because he was someone over the summer when he first started writing that first series of articles that, you know, got a lot of our attention. And when I read his first couple articles in response to the Amazing Atheist, my first response was, I want to reach out to this guy and I want to have his voice on my channel because I think this is really important. And he's saying a lot of the same things that I have been saying in general terms, but he's speaking from a place of experience because Martin Hughes is a black man and he can respond to racism from a much more personal, much more experientially informed place than I can as a white person. Because even though I as a white person can see racism and can be disgusted by it and can be disturbed by it, I have never really experienced it. And when I hear a prominent white person in my community spout racist ideas, I can say, oh, that's awful, that's offensive. You know, I don't like that, but I don't feel the same way about it that Martin does, because Martin is part of the group that is being marginalized and being attacked and being told to shut up by people like the Amazing Atheist. So that is a viewpoint that I think people like me absolutely have to be reaching out to and listening to and you know, wanting to be educated by and informed by. And hopefully that's what Martin and I were able to do with that video.
Well, you bring up a good point I hadn't previously thought of. He is a pathos writer, and he kind of bridged the worlds of the YouTube atheists, people who weren't, like you said, aware of it previously maybe, or weren't paying much attention to it.
Yeah, definitely.
He kind of brought it to them and what was actually going on YouTube. And I guess you could say maybe he's already got a ridiculous number of fucking Patreon. So it's not really going to matter that. In fact, I think he even said that. He's like, my piddling, whatever I sent to him by writing this article or whatever is not going to matter because he's got so many already anyway.
Right.
But the people who are going to go look at his videos aren't from reading his article aren't going to be the types that, I just completely agree. He's such a wise white man, No, that's not going to happen. They're going to be the ones to say, hey, wait a minute, this is some bullshit, and maybe he sends those people and over there and to see the videos, and maybe people start changing their minds, it doesn't happen overnight, and there's always going to be a core of people who are just going to be virulently racist or misogynistic. That's not going to change.
Right.
Regardless if it's in the atheist community or any other community, there's always going to be that type. So,
yeah, you're right.
But I'm glad that you were able to bring that, he was able to bring it out in his, Pathos, blog. And I'm glad that you were able to kind of amplify it a little bit, because you've got a couple of followers on YouTube yourself, I believe, sir.
Yeah, I was really glad that I could do that too. And I think, Martin deserves all the credit for it. But yeah, to me, that's something that is important to me to do, because I am fortunate for whatever reason to have a decent sized audience, not a huge audience by any stretch, but a decent sized audience, and a relatively big audience for a, feminism supporting, social justice supporting atheist. There are a couple of prominent atheists who are great about those issues, like Aaron, like Seth Andrews, like Matt Dillahunty. There are some really happy, and the Atheist Experience show in general, I think is just sort of an oasis in the middle of a swamp. So there are exceptions in the YouTube area. There are people who are really great people that deserve even a lot more attention than they get. But, I'm sort of right below their level. And, if I have that platform in this community, I feel like it's my responsibility to use it for something positive. And if I can welcome someone on especially someone from a different background than I am, from a different race or a woman or a trans person or a gay person or a person from a different religious background than I come out of or whatever, and let them use my platform to tell their story. I think it's something that I'm really happy to do. And I wish it's something that people did more often. So I was thrilled to have Martin on.
Well, you have 52,256 subscribers as of right now. I'm looking. So not a terribly small audience. You have pretty good, pretty wide voice, I would say. And I have to say that you are a voice for reason among the atheist / SJW community. You're kind of the bulwark almost against the amazing atheist assholes out there. Granted, they outnumber you, sure, but you have the power of right on your side.
Well, thank you. That's encouraging.
So I think people are paying attention. People are realizing that, these guys are assholes. And like I said, you're always going to have that contingent in any movement, anywhere, any group that are just going to be mean-spirited assholes. There's not much you can do, but I think you're right. Fighting the good fight. And I think it's important that somebody's doing it. You and, like you said, Aaron Rod's out there and Matt Dillahunty and, guys like that. I think it's important that y'all stay out there and do that. Have you actually ever talked to any of these guys? Have you had any sort of anything approaching a rational conversation or attempted to?
No. Most of them there are a few on that side, a few sort of in that group that I used to be friendly with and then moved away from when they sort of started going down that anti-feminist, racist kind of road. So there are a few like that I've had rational conversations with before. But, the guys like The Amazing Atheist or Thunderfoot or Sargon or, a few of the other ones who have to me, I had pegged as assholes from the beginning. I've never had any direct interaction with them. I've never had a comment exchange with them. I've never had a private message exchange with them. I've never tweeted at them. I've never had any direct contact with them at all. Because I think they're garbage. And I don't waste time trying to start conversations with people that I think are just complete losses. But yeah, there are a few sort of people in that circle that I have had relationships with previously, but none of the really nasty ones.
I just wonder, like you said, you were friendly with some of them. I just wonder what their motivations are on some of these. I guess ultimately it doesn't really matter so much the intentions. It's kind of the outcome that the damaging outcome, that the result, I guess, and the intentions.
Yeah.
They may just be doing this for it's like they put on almost like a uniform they put on for work or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is, and I say this not offering this as an excuse, but a lot of them, I think they do it to get views, because one thing you'll notice if you look at those, the attack videos that people make about me, the roasting videos, the response videos that people make about me, most of those, I wouldn't say most of them, but the ones that are made by the ones with, the big audiences, they for the most part have way more views than most of my most viewed videos, so and it's not just me, like people who make videos about Anita Sarkeesian or, about Lacey Green or Zoe Quinn or name another favorite target of people like that. They make videos like that, attacking feminists, attacking people who are identified as SJWs, and they get tons of views. There is sadly a pretty good market for that sort of content on Twitter and on YouTube. And so it's a reliable revenue stream. Like there's a financial obligation. There's not an obligation, but a financial incentive to do that sort of thing. And that doesn't mean that the people who do it aren't fucking scumbags, because they are, but they are facing a financial reward for being scumbags, so I think that's one of the big reasons why they do it. And yeah, people who I used to be somewhat friendly with, and then decided to, say, well, I guess I would rather be in the circle of someone like the Amazing Atheist who has 1 million subscribers than risk pissing him off by taking the side of someone like Steve who has 50,000 subscribers. I don't think that lets them off the hook, because I still think that that's the wrong thing to do. And I don't think that it means that they aren't to be held accountable for the views that those people espouse. But I do think that part of the explanation is that if you're a YouTube atheist, the money is in being an anti-feminist. The money is in saying that white people are the ones who are really the victims of racism, not black people. The money is in being a backwards thinking, bigoted, racist, sexist asshole. That's just the fact. It's sad. It doesn't have to be that way. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the way it is as of right now,
Well, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's pretty much
exactly.
Whatever's the most, sensationalistic shit they can put out. Whatever gets people most riled up, regardless if it's true or not, regardless, if it's backed up by anything resembling reality, it doesn't really matter. And you're right, it doesn't have to be that way, but unfortunately, human nature being as what it is, I'm afraid that's not going to that's not going to change anytime soon. I'm just a cynic, I guess, at heart. I just seem people are just like that. That's why reality TV is so fucking popular,
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of good sci-fi shows that come on and they last one season. I put a status update. Firefly lasted one season. We get Survivor for 33 fucking seasons.
Exactly. Exactly. If you want to know, if you want one statistic to tell you what is wrong with our culture.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but
yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What can we do? Is there something that people that, I know it's I don't want to sound overly, what can we do? But I think we should encourage people. What do you think as far as just kind of spreading the word? I think if they lose subscribers in the end, they're not going to do it if people aren't watching it, basically. So in your realm, which is the YouTube realm, and I think you're doing your part to kind of poke holes in their ideologies, in their argument. What do you think other people who can do just kind of deflate them?
I think the most important thing is to offer something else, to offer an alternative to what they're doing, to create content like I try to create, like Aaron tries to create, like other people try to create. And the thing to note about the ones we've been talking about as the good guys, like Aaron or Seth or Matt Dillahunty, is they rarely discuss social issues. Like they're not making tons of videos about how great feminism is or how great Black Lives Matter is or whatever. But what they're doing is they are presenting a case for atheism and a version of atheism and secularism that is not saturated in bigotry and anti-feminism and garbage. And that is incredibly important. It's important that people have places to go. People have content creators to go to, especially on YouTube, where the toxic stuff is the norm, where they can see people who are proud, outspoken atheists who are not complete jerks, you know. And I try to do my part for that, and other people with smaller audiences than I have, who deserve like much bigger audiences, try to do the same thing. And I think that is, in the long term, that is the solution, is to just create something that allows people to see, hey, you can be someone who's passionate about science, who's passionate about protecting the separation of church and state, who's passionate about atheism, and you don't have to also be an anti-feminist. You don't have to be someone who says feminism is cancer, or who says that, you know, well, the real racists are those Black Lives Matter people, or you know, all this other garbage that a lot of these toxic atheists say. You can create an alternative. You can show people, hey, you can be an atheist and be an outspoken member of the atheist community and the atheist movement, and also embrace feminism and embrace racial justice, and educate people that humanism is something that encompasses all of these things. You know, a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to be a feminist. I want to be a humanist. If you're not a feminist, you can't be a humanist. Feminism is part of humanism. Humanism means protecting the dignity and the equality and seeking justice for all humans. That includes the humans who are getting a raw deal of it right now, like women, like people of color, like trans people, like LGBT people of all categories. That's what being a humanist is. You're not a humanist instead of being a feminist. Feminism should be a part of your overall humanism. So, you know, making that case is important. And just showing that face, showing people that you can be a socially conscious, progressive atheist. You don't have to be one of these assholes. That's the most important thing. And every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to do what Martin Hughes did, and to do what other people on YouTube do, like Kevin Logan or H-Bomber guy, who was just brilliant, to take the air out of their sails every once in a while, you know, to make a video pointing out why the Amazing Atheist is wrong and is a jerk and is a racist, or write a blog entry about that, to make to make a video about why Sargon of Akkad is an ignorant fool who doesn't have any idea what he's talking about, and is just a buffoon and a clown who doesn't deserve to be taken seriously for a moment, which is something that H-Bomber guy has done brilliantly. That sort of thing is good too, you know, to do that sort of response, to do that sort of pushback. I don't think that should be the primary thing that we're doing, because I don't think that's the way forward. But I do think that kind of thing is really important. But the main thing is to just do something else, you know, to just provide a positive, progressive, socially conscious alternative, and create a space on YouTube that is analogous to the spaces that have been created, for the most part, with a great deal of success in the secular atheist movement, you know, offline. I think that's the key.
Well, I know, and you're right, of course, about YouTube. There's not nearly enough YouTube, or I'm assuming there's not nearly enough YouTubers that are all sort of your ilk to battle against the evildoers of, you know, the amazing asshole and their, and that's a shame. I know, of course, I'm in the podcast community, and there's been a pretty fair explosion of it in the last couple of years. I've noticed a lot of different atheist podcasts have come out. But the problem, of course, with that is you have to already kind of, podcasting is something that you sort of, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a steep learning curve or something, but you just have to know about podcasts anyway. YouTube, like I said, is pretty much ubiquitous. Everybody knows about fucking YouTube, and it's really easy to access. And that's where a lot of people go for a lot of their music even, and videos as well. So, I mean, I think it's important, like you said, that people just go out there and say, and I don't even think it has to necessarily be some super well produced, awesome shit, like sensationalistic. I mean, it could be just some guy, anybody just get on YouTube and if you have a message to tell or whatever. I think that would, of course it can be daunting, I think, if it's just one person tries to do a response video to, I think you said that you couldn't, but YouTube has changed. But if somebody was to do something in response to something that amazing asshole said, and if they said, and if it was in a well-reasoned way, they might get shot down, sure, but of course I've heard it said, it's not so much the people, because you're not going to convince the person that you're arguing,
right? But
it's the people who are listening on the side who might be, swayed by your opinion if you give a good reason opinion.
Yeah, I think you saw an example of that, when Christy Winters had a debate against Sargon of Akkad, where she just annihilated him. She beat his ass from one side of YouTube to the other. She completely outclassed him in every way. And there were people who claimed to be on Sargon's side who said, wow, she just wiped the floor with him, and there are even some people who said, you know what? I think she might have changed my mind about some things. I think her arguments and her performance in this debate maybe actually gave me some things to think about. And obviously you would want to have that happen more often. But the fact that it happens at all is very encouraging. So yeah, that kind of thing is very important. And it does have much more of an effect on the people watching than on the other person in the debate. And I think that's worth remembering. And it's also important to support each other. Like when you talk about the person who has a very small YouTube audience who decides, you know what, I have something to say, and it's going to be in response to someone, who made a video that got 500,000 views and has, 500,000 subscribers or whatever. If those of us who are also of that same mindset see that video or see that person making that effort, I think we need to be supportive, and we need to let them know, hey, you know what? We know that you're catching a lot of shit for this, and we know that you're probably being dogpiled and just inundated by abusive comments from people. But we're here for you, and we're going to support you, and we want you to keep speaking, and we want to keep hearing your voice. I think that's really important too. That when we find other people who are trying to do the same thing that we're doing, that we reach out to them and we support them.
Exactly. And that's the other thing I wanted to say was the support aspect. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Steve is going, and he's already just volunteered just now to mentor anybody who wants to go on YouTube and do this. So just write, look up Steve Shives on YouTube, and he'll help you out, man.
Yeah, contact me.
But he would back. I'm sure anybody who
I do. As much as time allows, I do try to help people with stuff like that. If people do get in touch with me with questions about that kind of thing, I do as best as I'm able. I do try to get back to people about that kind of stuff because I do think it's really important.
You do. You do work. I made a joke earlier, but you do like videos every fucking day, and I'm sure it's not, it's work. It's not like you're just sitting on your ass, not doing anything. Just eating Cheetos, drinking beer all day or something. You're actually
it ain't exactly coal mining, but it is work.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I want to really thank you again for coming on. It really is a pleasure, and I have to say, I don't want to kiss your ass too much, but I do admire you a great deal for what you do on YouTube, especially against the unwashed hordes, and such of the amazing asshole in their ilk. So, of course, why don't you give people your contact detail? Of course, you're on YouTube.
Yeah, if you can just go to youtube.com/Steve Shives and you'll hit me right there. And from there you can find me on Facebook and on Twitter, and I'm relatively easy to find.
Yeah, he's everywhere. He's got that hat on all the time. So
I have it on right now.
Yeah. What is that hat again? I forgot.
It's the hat of the Hagerstown Suns, which is my local minor league baseball team.
That's Maryland, right?
Yeah.
Is that an Orioles affiliate?
They used to be. Now they are a Washington Nationals affiliate.
Oh, that's right. The Nationals.
Yeah.
Is that
actually for for a long time they were a Blue Jays affiliate, which makes no sense geographically, but
doesn't Cal Ripken live out there in that area?
Yeah, he lives closer to Bowie, which is about maybe an hour or two from where I am. I am Hagerstown, and the area where I live is in Western Maryland, and Cal is more in the Baltimore area, sort of the central / maybe a little bit into the southeastern area of Maryland. But yeah, and there's an Orioles affiliate in Bowie called the Bowie Bay Sox.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's one of my idols.
Oh, Cal is great. Yeah.
All right, Steve. Well, I won't hold you any longer. Again, thanks for coming on, and I encourage everybody to go check out Steve, watch his videos. Steven Stuffick, man, you gotta do it. Steven Stuffick, I'm telling you, man, it's gonna win an award somehow. I don't know how, but it's gonna win a
I tell everybody, if those videos ever go viral, that's all I'm doing. I'm just gonna devote myself to Stuffy for the rest of my YouTube career.
I wouldn't blame you one bit.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, take it easy, okay?
Well, I thank you so much for saying nice things about me. That really means a lot, and it's very humbling. And thanks for inviting me on. I thought we had a great time.
Yeah, I thought so too. All right, man. Take care. That'll do it for another episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Steve Shives for coming on. I was honestly surprised that he agreed to it, but I'm super excited that he did come on, and I hope you all really enjoyed it, because I know I enjoyed talking to him. If you want to come check out the show, you can come to facebook.com/Podunk Polymath on Facebook. Twitter is @Podunk Polymath. Email podunkpolymath@gmail.com. YouTube, youtube.com/C/The Podunk Polymath. Google plus.google.com/ the symbol for plus, the Podunk Polymath. And if you want to come support me on Patreon, become part of the posse, you can come to patreon.com/the Podunk Polymath and join the posse there. Also, of course, you can donate on the page at PayPal. There's a button there for that. Also, if you come to the page, you can follow me on WordPress blogs, because sometimes I do blog on occasion. You can follow. There's my Twitter feed's on there, so if you want to see what's going on there, you can subscribe on my RSS feed. There's Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher buttons as well. Of course, there's also the Patreon button. Recent comments and recent posts are also there if you want to come check me out. So thanks again for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed recording, and I enjoyed talking to Steve. So until next time, y'all take it easy, okay?